I say it as I quickly rub my nose. All right. Welcome to 99% Geek Presents, a weekly geeky blog. I am your host and writer behind 99geek.ca, Andrew Geczy. As primarily a fiction writer, releasing chapters of my books in weekly chunks on my Patreon, like what? What was I trying to say there? I don't even know. On my Patreon, like patrons? I don't know where I was going with that. As primarily a fiction writer, releasing chapters of my books in weekly chunks, my Patreon, like episodes of TV shows when I'm not trying to make ends meet in what feels like a poverty nightmare. I wanted my brand, 99% Geek, to offer more than just my writing, pulling from my many interests and passions. I don't have much to offer in the way of talent besides my writing, but I'm passionate about pop culture and try to keep myself as up to date on politics, science, and art as I can. Being a huge TV nerd, I run down the best shows of the week, go over all the major news headlines for people who have maybe gotten too tired to follow regular news, and breaking it down and explaining it for people who might feel unable to follow along. And before anything else, I spotlight something cool and geeky for the week. Remember, you can follow along by going to patreon.com/99geek or just 99geek.ca. I should really just change that to 99geek.ca. This is Geekly Weekly number 100. Bum 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 bum. That sounded like a machine gun fire. I meant it to be like just a rapid of the drums, but I suck at fake instruments. And it's really something I should get good at if I hope to ever make it in the podcasting field. I don't know what I was thinking, even trying. So yes, this is Geekly Weekly number 100 for the week of Saturday, May 29th. And this week's highlight is never be bored. Just don't do it. This is basically a summary of the mission statement of Geekly Weekly, which is basically never be bored. I have been doing this blog for 100 episodes now. That's 100 weeks that I have provided you examples of things you can do to not be bored. There's a million things out there, a million experiences for you to enjoy, and I hope to keep calling them out on this blog. No one has ever had any reason to be bored ever. That's probably not true. There are absolute exceptions to that. There is also a time before the internet. Sure, you've watched Game of Thrones, but have you read the books? They're supposed to be better, and Apple Books have enhanced editions that make the experience better than ever. Have you played Mass Effect yet? Just beat Legendary? What about Andromeda? It's not as good, but it's far from bad. The gameplay is actually much improved, and the multiplayer can be a lot of fun. If you're not into gaming, too bad. There's a million options out there. You could start the Assassin's Creed series, a series where every game takes you on a tour through historical cities, recreating cities like Victorian London, or colonial America, or ancient Egypt, or Renaissance Venice. And they make these ancient cities with a level of historical accuracy so impressive that they've won awards. That game series should appeal to even non-gamers, just for the chance to run around cities you'd never see otherwise. Have you always had a passion for city planning or ruling a country? Try SimCity or Civilization. Or the most casual of all games, The Sims. I've recently, going back to Civilization, I've been hearing a lot about people love Crusader Kings. It's a game I've known about, but I've never played myself. It's from a series of other, like there are similar games like it, Europa Universalis, I think is another one. But Crusader Kings has been getting a lot of talk lately. Crusader Kings 3 gives a lot of options for like just variety of things you can do, and you get to just sort of be a king of your nation and run it your way. And I guess some of the options are just absolutely insane. Lots of incest and all kinds of weird insanery as far as that's concerned. Apparently, it's possible to like be a gay king and be like homosexual and hiding it because it's the Middle Ages and shit. And just like there's a whole dynamic in the game of just like fucking dudes on the side. I don't know. So people really seem to enjoy the fuck out of that game, and get a lot of fun from it. So if you're into like Civilization and you've never tried any of the other Civilization-like games that are out there, like there are so many of them. Crusader Kings isn't even like scratching the surface. There's let me see if I can look up games like Crusader Kings. Games like Crusader Kings. 'Cause I believe it's like Europa Universalis came first, and they took that engine. They were like, what if it was medieval? And it just apparently made it shit tons better. There's Victoria I've heard of as well. That's supposed to be really good. Stellaris in space. Have you ever played Stellaris? It's kind of going in a different direction in the strategy. I mean, it's funny because these are all just strategy, turn-based sort of games, but they have very different. Within that, there are genres now and varieties that you can explore. And Crusader Kings is just more focused on the politics, I think, side of things, which sounds fascinating to me, and I really want to play that franchise one day. Um, but like Stellaris going into space and stuff, that's crazy. And there are so many games like Stellaris. Watch what happens when I do this. Games like Oh yeah, I forgot to get the video capture device to show my. There we are. There. Now everybody can see. So these are the games that are like Crusader Kings. People watching, which is 0 people. Very exciting. Europa Universalis, Victoria, Solaris, Hearts of Iron. I've heard of that one. I don't think that's as much focused on the politics. I think that's more focused. That's like I think it's like a Panzer um whatchamacallit, Panzer General type game made by Paradox Interactive. Lets you command any nation in World War II, yeah, and then you're just fighting in World War II and stuff. And so that's focused on World War II. If that's your intrigue, which I mean there are 1,000 games about World War. We should do that one day. We should do just all the games about World War II. But games like Stellaris. If you've never really been into strategy games, I'm telling you, there's so much variety and things that like, and a lot of these games have options so you can start on an easier sort of setting that leads you, tutorializes you through all the different gameplay because they are very complicated games, but like a lot of them you don't have to deal with the whole complicated aspects of them right away. You can start with the simple stuff at the beginning and then it just slowly introduces, and then now you got to worry about this, and now you got to worry about this, and as it's comfortable for you. Top 10 games like Stellaris, because those were not what I was looking for. It just gave me the same games I was already talking about. Distant World, I've heard about that. That's supposed to be a great one. Master of Orion, of course, is a fantastic one. I've heard a lot of good things about Master of Orion series. Somebody's saying Beyond Earth. I don't know about if that really counts. That does kinda, but not really. Star Ruler 2, somebody's saying. Yeah, no, they gave poor ones. What about like what's that? Endless Space. I've heard really good things about Endless Space. And if you're less interested in the strategy, what if you want something that's like you're really super into like how do astronauts get into space? Like you want you want to explore the physics of it. There's this game called Kerbal Space Program that's all focused on like realistically launching someone off a planet. You're launching weird little alien dudes, but like you have to do it, and so it looks super cartoony. It looks super cartoony, but then the gameplay is all like you got to get the math right, and if you get the math wrong, they die horribly in an explosion and things like that. So it's like it's crazy shit, and that's apparently a crazy good game. So many choices. Endless Legends. If you've never heard of the Endless series, it's basically there's different genres of games. Like so, Endless Space is like Stellaris, where you're in space doing strategy stuff. But before that, there was Endless Legends, which is like Civilization, and the whole lore of it is like, oh well, when you finish Endless Legend, your people fire off a rocket into space, and then you're in space, and it's endless space, and you're doing stuff in endless space, and that's just the strategy game in space. But then something happens, and one of your people gets crashed down onto a planet and gets stuck inside the planet, and there's all these dungeons and stuff, and suddenly it's a rogue crawler, and that's Dungeons of the Endless, I think it's called. And that is another completely different type of game. It's like a rogue light, um, and you're going around getting gear and like finding other people to join you. I guess I've never played it, but it sounds interesting. Just the fact that there's lore between all these games that are otherwise in completely different genres, different categories of games, but yet they're connected by this story. And so it's Dungeon of the Endless, and you're running around in the middle inside this planet because your people died in a space fight, in endless space, and now you're running around inside a planet, and then you eventually at the end of that game get to the surface and start a civilization, and then suddenly you're back to Endless Legends 2 now, and then they go to space and it's Endless Space 2, and like it's like a weird cycle like that. So that's, have you ever played any of the Endless series? Like there's so many. Even if you have like played Civilization or you've played SimCity, well, have you played City Skylines? Because that takes the idea of SimCity and then just makes it different and has different. All these games have value. Is how I like to put it. Everything has value, and finding the value in things keeps you from ever being bored. That's my belief anyway. Have you tried Minecraft? If you love to build, or any of the other hundreds of Minecraft clones? Because you won't believe how many Minecraft clones there are. There's a zombie game that I've always wanted to get into because it just seems so cool. Where it looks like just Minecraft but looks realistic. Like the graphics are pseudo realism. And you're building actual houses and stuff with like appliances and shit. And uh, and there are zombies, and the zombies are coming to kill you, and you gotta hide in your house from the zombies. Let's see. If I look up zombie Minecraft, it will not come up, but it should. No, because there's zombies in Minecraft, of course. Um, like Minecraft, but zombies. I think it's like 10 days to die, 7 days to die. That's what it is. 7 days to die. Um, I've heard it's very buggy, and the console version has never been patched because the studio that bought out the game didn't get the console rights or something like that, so they can't patch the game, even though they have improved the PC version to be actually like apparently awesome. But the console version not so much, which is too bad because I'd rather play it on consoles personally. So I've always kind of been waiting till they update the console version, and then I'll check it out there. That's 7 days to die. If you want to check that out, that sounds crazy and cool. Where were we? Maybe you're into aliens or you just want to play a game that's intense and hard but cerebral and won't rely on reaction times. Try XCOM. XCOM 1 and 2 are both amazing must-play games. Have you played them? Because if not, you can't complain about being bored. Get into video games. It's worth it. I'm assuming people who are listening to this probably already play video games. It's called Geekly Weekly, but I'm always seemingly trying to convince people anyway. Play video games. And those are just video games. Are you caught up on the MCU? There's still the shows that you could be watching if you haven't caught up on all the shows in the MCU, or the ones that are no longer canon in the MCU, like Daredevil or Agents of Shield. Have you watched all of those? Yeah? Oh, okay. And you're still hungry for superheroes? Have you watched Invincible? Presumably, because that was at the top of our ranking every week that it aired. What about The Boys or Umbrella Academy or Jupiter's Legacy? Those are all kind of similar sort of hero shows, but they all apparently have value in their own ways. I've heard they're all incredible, and I just haven't watched them yet, but they're on my list to get to. So I mean, I can never be bored because it's like I still have those to watch, right? So if I was ever like, I don't know what to do, oh, I guess I'll watch one of those three shows. But I'm never thinking that. But yeah, there's also the DC side of things, and their animated stuff is especially amazing. Have you caught up on Harley Quinn? That animated cartoon was one of the funniest things I've watched in a long, long time. Well, then there was Rick and Morty, and that blew everything else out of the water. Have you watched Rick and Morty? Because I'm not caught up in that yet, but it's so good. You should be watching. You could always go back and watch classic SNL, or watch Doctor Who from its 1960s beginning. That could take forever. What about comics? Have you really dived into everything there is to love in comic books? Because there are hundreds of thousands of comics out there that are worth reading. Thousands of books too, apparently, so they say. What I'm getting at, and I say this all the time, there should be no reason that anyone should ever be bored. Ever. Every time I hear people complain about being bored during the pandemic, I literally turn in my my future grave. I don't know if that's something anyone's ever said before, but I just said it. First off, not everyone has had that experience. A lot of people have had to live a literal nightmare world of non-stop death working as an essential worker while you got to stay home and be bored. Second of all, even stuck in a house or an empty room with nothing but padded walls and my phone, I never have any reason to be bored. I have thousands of podcasts to catch up on. I can read my comics and novels from my phone. I can play almost every Final Fantasy game from my phone. No one in the world should ever be bored, unless you're in prison in a cell kept away from stimulation. Think about those people and all the millions of things they would love to do. And you can do practically all of it from the comfort of your own home, even in the middle of a lockdown pandemic. So what is everyone complaining about? If anything, the pandemic is an excuse to start living your lives, not stop. I know it's almost over now, but after 100 episodes of trying to hammer this point in, I thought it would be the perfect focus for the 100th episode. Just don't be bored. Don't let yourself be bored. Sure, I can be depressed. Sure, I can be lonely and miserable, but I'm never bored. That's one of the few things in our life that we can control. So if you are out there and you're bored out of your mind, please stop and message me and tell me about yourself and what your recent interests have been. And I will pick something that suits you because there's stuff out there for everyone. I really believe it. Moving on to the Geekly Weekly TV rankings, ranking all the TV shows I watch so that you know how best to watch your TV, how best to use your TV watching time. Starting at the bottom, as per usual. Remember, you can get my instant reactions to these shows and more by following me at Andrew Geczy, that's AndrewGeczy on Twitter. The worst show of the week, not the worst show of the week. I'm sure the worst show of the week was probably like some Jersey Shore thing. But the worst show on this list was Robot Chicken Archie Special. I gave it 2.5 stars, which is funny because I was actually super excited for this when I saw the trailer. Um, I think I saw the trailer and I saw so much potential in the trailer, and then the whole 22-minute episode was basically just the trailer, just nothing. Because like the trailer showed potential, but there was nothing in it. It was just a song, and then the actual episode was equally as substantialless. I was just expecting a lot more. They didn't seem all that interested in telling stories in the Archie universe, so much as just getting everyone to fuck and then murder each other. There's pedophilia against children, Archie fucks a dog, and I didn't even find a lot of it very funny. But I mean, some of it, sure. Some of the pedophilia against children, yeah, but some of it didn't land. No. There were some lines I laughed at. Some of the over-the-top gratuity was absurd enough to be funny, but some of it just felt uncomfortable. Moving on from there, number 12 on the list, also 2.5 stars, Modoc. I almost gave this show two stars, but since I didn't review it last week and the first episode is a little better than the second, and I personally feel like it was better than Robot Chicken's Archie Special, therefore I gave it the 2.5 stars so I could slide it just over the Robot Special, but not by much. It's probably about just as funny, that is to say, as many jokes fall flat as work. But that's not to say I didn't laugh at a bunch of the jokes. It also feels like it's ripping off Robot Chicken sometimes, which is forgivable knowing Seth Green was apparently involved. But the show suffers from an opposite issue from the Archie special, where Robot Chicken was too vulgar. This show is too saccharine, too dull and boring. When I'm not laughing, I'm wondering how much longer before it's over. Perhaps this is a show that would have benefited from that 15-minute length or something from that 15-minute length of something like a normal Robot Chicken episode or Justice League Action. I just find some of the humor and some of the domestic family aspect just doesn't land for me. Also, I know this show dropped all at once in the US, but in Canada it is dropping one at a time, one episode a week. So if I review it as such, maybe that will send someone the message that this 3D structure is better. Yay, Canada! So we're on episode 2. That was episode 2 of that one. Episode 3 will be next week. And we get that on Disney Plus because Disney Plus has the Disney Plus Star, which is basically just all of their Hulu content mixed in with a bunch of their Fox content, which is awesome. The amount of things that are on there now, they're just like, what? You can watch some really fucked up stuff on Disney Plus right now if you live in places that aren't the US. So yay, yes. Moving on from there to number 11 on the list, The Flash with 2.5 stars. This episode was the most Flash episode of the season. We had some real Flash moments, including a bunch of CG insanity. Them fighting on another plane of existence was cool, and he ran around a tornado a lot. So it gets a bunch of goodwill for that. But that didn't change the fact that I was rolling my eyes throughout the whole scene, especially those final moments. And I think it's supposed to mean to say the whole episode. Okay, well, anyway. I was rolling my eyes throughout the whole episode, especially those final moments in the cabin in the sky. I also hated Nora's motivations this episode, which were all over the place and impossible to follow. There are more things to like about this episode. No wonder I didn't use the word episode before, because I use that word way too many times in this. But sometimes I'm really tired and I'm just rushingly writing this down so I don't forget. There were more things to like about this episode than most this season, but that's not saying much. So it did kind of feel like The Flash, but it still wasn't necessarily a great episode. And the writing was still all over the place, and the motivations of the villain was all over the place. Yeah, and that's pretty much The Flash in general these days. Moving on from there to Superman and Lois, which I had given up on. I had literally given up on it, and turns out this week I enjoyed it better than The Flash. I know I said that I had given up on this show, and I had. And what actually brought me back was reading a summary of the finale of Black Lightning, and it didn't sound that bad. Like, it sounds like they fixed everything just in time for the show to end, but we'll see for ourselves. I also read Black Lightning and Superman will be crossing over with The Flash next season. I decided just to push through, as I always do with the CW DC verse shows, and I'm glad I did. Last week's episode got a little better towards the end, after the part where I gave up on it, but not really. And this week, while the one kid still continued to be annoying as fuck, everything else in this episode was actually pretty interesting. I loved Clark and Lois investigating quotations Lex quotations, and I love the reveal that quotations Lex quotations was actually John Henry Steele. He's a fan favorite from the comics and animated show. That reveal made me really excited and definitely elevated this show and that I had almost given up on. The part where he lifts the hammer and you're not the only man of steel. I'm like, fuck yeah. How could I have given up on the show? Oh yeah, Jordan exists. I hate that kid so much. He's so annoying. Even this episode, like, I don't know if you have watched the show. I hope you didn't. But there's a scene where he can't go to school because his hearing's now all fucked up. And so his brother goes to school and lies for him and tells this really sweet story about the real reason he's not here is he got beat up by bullies and shit. He just didn't want to tell you, he's a really cool dude. And then Jordan listens in right at the end of that sentence when this guy goes out and be like, and you're also really cool, and I think you're totally awesome, and I'm kind of into you. And then Jordan's like, "Oh my God, he's trying to steal my girlfriend!" And he gets all furious and shit and causes a huge tantrum because, of course, you can't go through a single freaking episode where he's not freaking out about himself all the time because he's so fucking. Oh, I hate him. I hate him. I hate him. I hate him. And the show does everything it can to make me hate him more all the time, and I don't understand how they think this is good writing because it makes me not want to watch the show. Sorry, but it does. Apparently it's dropping a lot of frames. My internet right now must be god awful because I'm not doing anything. But I was having other issues earlier, so wonderful. Um, I don't really care. I can just upload the recording because I'm recording it too. But I'm sorry for anyone who's trying to watch this and it's not working out for you. Let's see, what else are we up to here? So, Black Lightning. As with Superman and Lois, I'm glad I decided to catch up, even though I wouldn't say the finale was great. I did love the twist at the end with Jen. The reveal that the change in actress was an imposter and the real actress showed up in the finale to set things straight. I have a feeling the behind the scenes was more complicated, but what a way to use a return of an actress to make a badass story beat. This finale did a lot of things that people watching the show wanted to see that it wasn't giving us whole season. That said, I still thought the music use and the action scenes were all tonally off as usual, and the fight scene between Black Lightning and Tobias at the end was clunky and poorly shot. God, and every review this week is horribly written. I'm sorry. Even laughable at points, the Black Lightning and Tobias fight, as well as how laughable my writing is. Even his death scene, where it seemed like for some weird reason they had to do it in one take with the camera locked in a medium long shot. It was such a bad death scene. So random, but despite the show bringing out its classics, both positive and negative, there was nothing in this show's finale that frustrated me as much as Jordan on Superman and Lois, so this finale gets a slight edge in the ranking. And again, it was nice for them to finally do good story decisions after a season of horrible story decisions. Be like, guess what? We fixed everything. Now you'll never see the show again. Moving on from there, number 8 on the list, Mayor of Easttown at 3.5 stars. This was a pretty good episode of the show, feeling like it was taking the story in a direction I more wanted it to go than past episodes. It's weird that this episode could be so good for the overall narrative and yet be so poorly stitched together. The whole episode, all I kept noticing was how every single scene in this episode felt like a cold open. Normally, you set up a scene by having her get a call. What's that? A 911 at the blah blah house? But instead, in this episode, she'd be like eating pancakes, all like, pancakes are good. And then it would just cut to her showing up at the blah blah house, like, you called 911? And it's like, did she drive straight there from the pancake house? Is this happening on a different day? A different week? Like, I'm so confused right now. But trying to ignore that weird issue that plagued the entire episode long after I'd noticed it and pointed out on Twitter, it wasn't otherwise a bad episode of the show. At all. Moving on from there. Number 7 on the list. It wasn't a bad episode of the show, but it was number 8th on the list. So, poor Mare of Easttown. Number 7 on the list, Hacks, with 4 stars. I'll give it a weak 4 stars. I wouldn't say it was great, but both episodes this week did feel really strong despite the continued flaws of the show. It's even hard to pick which episode I like better. The first episode this week with Geek from Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. was amazing because he played basically the same person. I'm not a huge fan of casual cocaine use, but it didn't pull me out for long. I thought her old friends were hilarious, especially their new friend who was a replacement for Ava, Haley. She was so funny. The second episode was strong in very different ways, though, and I enjoyed the quieter moments, though I also enjoyed the assistant getting his with the water guy. That's his, I guess, supposed to be in quotations. Both characters remain really unlikable at points. That is the two main characters, Ava and Jean Smart's character. Um, and then they're very likable at other points, which I suppose is just what it's like to be human. So it does a good job at that, but sometimes it just makes it really hard to root for those people. They're so shitty sometimes. Moving on from there, number 6 on the list, Legends of Tomorrow with 4 stars. This was a fun, silly episode of the show that might have stepped a bit too far into the zany territory. I'm looking at that scene in the Oval Office where they literally play football with a nuclear football. Ridiculous. Potentially on brand, but so dumb. There were other dumb aspects of this episode, including Castro and the weed gummies, and all things considered, this entire episode was a bit of a mess. The plot took weird turns and ended in a weird place, and everyone was a little off. That said, I liked Rory when he was all cleaned up, and despite how dumb this episode was, I can't deny it was a lot of fun and I enjoyed myself. I couldn't possibly give it less than a 4 star, but it's maybe not a strong 4 stars. Moving on from there, number 5 on the list, The Equalizer, with 4 stars as well. This was a good episode of the show. It was nice with Delilah getting involved, and her finding out her mom's secret was cool as well. I liked Queen Latifah working together with the gangs to take down a rival gang, and the one gang leader respecting her. I guess the bad gang leader respected her too, but he didn't expect the bloodbath she brought down on him. And neither did I. I wanted the gang to come back, but by that point in the episode I'd given up hope that that would happen. Also, the ending sort of fizzled out. I liked that they yada yada past the funeral in a subtle way, but then they just sort of ended on a question and a look and a cheap attempt at tension. I said on Twitter when the kid is like, "Who are you, Mom?" Instead of looking all mysterious and not saying anything and then cutting the credits, she should have just flat out said, "I'm the equalizer." And then credits. That would have been amazing. I would have cheered. I'd been like, "Fuck yeah, go equalizer." It would have been like a Dark Knight moment. But anyway, it was otherwise a pretty good episode of the show. I enjoyed it. 4 stars. Moving on to number 4 on the list, Saturday Night Live with 4 stars as well. I think goes to show that there wasn't a lot of super strong, like there wasn't a lot of transcendently strong things out this week. Things were a little weaker than usual, as we're on 4th on the list, and things are still only 4 stars. And Saturday Night Live is what it is. It's Saturday Night Live, number 4 on the list with 4 stars, and it doesn't usually get that high. This was a great week for SNL. I was already a huge fan of Anya Taylor-Joy, but now I'm just a bigger fan still. She was amazing and easily one of the best guests of the season. No matter what sketch she was in, I said guest, but I should have said host, shouldn't I? Anyway, no matter what sketch she was in, she seemed completely invested in her character, and was a strength in every sketch she was in, and I didn't just totally be redundant at all. And most of the sketches were really strong, and some of the strongest sketches of the whole season. Not every sketch was strong, though. I didn't find the bra sketch very funny, nor did I think the Pride song was great, though neither was it terrible. It was fine. The Weekend Update, however, was also one of the strongest of the season, and Lil Nas X, or whatever his name is, was really good as well. I'm not a fan of his music, but I really appreciate the way he's pushing boundaries. So horribly written. All of these reviews, I just really didn't even proofread at all. His first performance was something you would see from a Britney Spears or Lady Gaga, but it was all men gyrating and dancing around, and I think that's more progressive than a lot of people realize. That was some gender bending shit, and I loved it. I support it. I'm not downloading his album on iTunes, but I support him as a person. And if you like his music, you should download his music on iTunes. Don't pirate. Don't be like me. No, I've downloaded plenty of music on iTunes. Moving on from there. Star Wars: The Bad Batch. Oh, this is in the top three. I should have pointed that out first because bum ba da 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 dum bum 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 bum. Episode 100. Number three on the list, Star Wars: The Bad Batch with 4 stars. This episode was a very strong 4 stars. I actually was pretty dead set on SNL getting this spot, but this episode probably even deserves 4.5 stars, if I wasn't being stringent tonight. It was fun with some decent action, though nothing exceptional, and best of all, some really fun connections to the movies. You ever wanted to know what the Rancor that Luke killed was doing when it was growing up? Now we know. And the Bad Batch had to save it from Bib Fortuna so that their contact would tell them information about Fennec, who I'm pretty sure I remember kills Bib Fortuna in the last scene of Mandalorian. I can't remember for sure if it's her or Boba Fett, but I think it was her. So that's a fun, interesting 5 degrees of Fennec this episode played. As I mentioned earlier, outside the cool canon connections, there wasn't much standout in this episode, and Rex wrestling the Rancor at the end was a little silly. Or maybe I'm just being a fuddy-duddy. I also noticed a bunch of people came up in arms saying, hey, this is not the Rancor that killed Luke. In the old canon, that Rancor had a name. I don't know where it got that name, but apparently his name was Pankeet or something like that. Um, that's me just going off of, I read it like twice, so a while ago, and I've already pretty much forgotten it, but it was something like Pankeet or something like that. But it's possible that this is just ignoring that. I don't think that was something that was established in anything super canon. So it's possible this is just erasing that and erasing them with Mushi is what they named this Rancor. And I seem remember someone saying something about like this. I'm pretty sure there's a moment in Return of the Jedi where the dude's it's dead and the dude comes out crying. The one guy's Mushi, like I think he's like saying Mushi Mushi to like this other guy, or the other guy saying Mushi to him or something like that. So that's why it's like I think that makes sense to me that this is the one that Luke killed, but apparently some comic book or something gave it a different name. So who knows? Maybe it's and also apparently that wiki entry that exists also claims that it's a male. So it's possible maybe this was its mate or something like that. Who knows? Who knows? Oh, or hey, not Cheerios. But yeah, so I'm gonna go with the until I see something proving otherwise. I'm gonna go with the theory that it is in fact the one that Luke kills later, and that's sad. Hmm. But those honey nut Cheerios were good. Moving on from there, Kung Fu with 4.5 stars. I'm sorry to all the Asian people who listen to this. That was very inappropriate. I really enjoyed this episode. I will admit I am a huge fan of the trope. Not just the fall down and get back up trope, but specifically the hero gets their ass beat and injured in a major story related fight, but next episode, still nursing their wounds, they're going to have to fight someone who is, or at least looks, even bigger and scarier, and they're going to have to do it while still injured, and they're going to win. Fuck yeah. Should have ended the quotations there, but fuck yeah. Feels awesome every time. And honestly, I enjoyed this episode considerably more than last. I also love the reveal at the end with her mom knowing about Kung Fu the whole time. I have hated that character the entire run of the show, and they turned me around on her in a freaking instant. I even enjoyed the part at the beginning where she slunk off with her ex. I know Henry was hurt, but I think it's reasonable. She felt comfortable with her ex, and she already knew he wouldn't judge her or think less of her at her worst. She's allowed to have feelings for her ex without being in love with him. I think Henry is being unfair. And that's me just giving you my opinion on their ship, the relationship, because here I am, relationship expert. Andrew over here. Moving on to number one on the list. Bum ba da 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 dun 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 dun. There should be no doubt. At this point, you should already know what it is. Um, even though I mean, I don't even think it's not really worth 5 stars, but like it's not like that super tier of show. But I mean, right now and everything else is so fine. Fear the Walking Dead makes the top spot again. It's doing fantastic work. Some of its best work of the show. I don't think it's the best work of, but it's still really good. It's still like doing a great job of keeping people engaged, and that's kind of what matters. Whether or not I think the overall story is as strong as past stories, I think it's doing a great job each episode keeping us engaged, and that's fun. So 4.5 stars. This episode is great. It was amazing. Short of a few snags, I would even go so far as to say this was worth 5 stars. I love Alicia. She's amazing, a total badass, and she showed how badass she was this episode. If the show was just about her, I'd still watch. The pace was intense. Lionel Luthor is all kinds of crazy balls. It was a great week for the Walking Dead universe, a nigh perfect episode. That said, I began the episode tweeting, so the keys are absolutely for a nuke, right? And at the end of the episode, they treated it as this big reveal. They're like, they're nukes! And it's like, yeah, we know. And the whole episode, Alicia's just asking, you want to destroy the world and start over? But how are you going to do that? What does that have to do with these keys? It's like, you don't know? You seriously don't know, Alicia? I don't know. Maybe they're magic keys. Like, fucking, there's only one possible thing. He's being like, we're going to burn it all down. We're going to kill it all and hide underground and then come up when it's done and it's all going to be over. It's like, what possible else could he be talking about besides a nuclear weapon? How are you this dumb, Alicia? So yeah. Also, I don't see how one nuke is gonna destroy the whole world, but good luck with that, Lionel Luthor. Moving on from there. That's the end of the TV rankings. Great shows this week. Not really, but Fear the Walking Dead was good. Kung Fu was good. Star Wars: A Bad Batch was good. Saturday Night Live was good. Equalizer was good. Legends of Tomorrow was good. Hacks was good. Bear of Easttown was okay. If you're not invested in the story, I don't blame you for not watching it at that point. I would say that's where I would cut it off as not worth your time really after that. Sorry, everything else. Moving on from there to the Geekly predictions. New releases people will be talking about around the water cooler for the next week. Starting at the top, I almost forgot this. I watched the trailer for this. I was like, it's so good. And then I went to Twitter. I was like, it's so good. And then I went back to this. I was like, what was I about to put at number one? Ah, forget it. And then I published this and was like, oh shit, yeah, Sweet Tooth. Sweet Tooth comes out on Netflix Friday, and it looks amazing. It looks so amazing that, as I said, I just explained and now I explain all over again. But anyway, it looks amazing. That's what I'm looking for when I talk about the other trailers on this list not hyping me up, as I'm going to very soon. This trailer is all hype, and I love it. If you haven't seen it yet, you should check it out. The Sweet Tooth trailer, click on it, watch it. It's so cool. Even the music use is really cool. They do like who does that? Is that Tears for Fears? I try to make my way to the ordinary world. I will learn to survive. That song. Should have sang that into my Shazam, and then I would have been like, "Oh, I know what it is. It's a really awful person who can't sing, trying to sing a song. Get out of here, you motherfucker." Let's see. Ordinary World. Duran Duran. I didn't want to say Duran Duran. I was like, I just want to say Duran Duran because I love all their other songs. But no, it is absolutely Duran Duran. Of course, it's Duran Duran. I don't have, I don't have Rio on my iTunes. I wish I did. It's a good Duran Duran song too. But anyway, Sweet Tooth, Netflix, Friday. This looks amazing. It looks so good. That's all I can say about it. You should check it out. Sweet Tooth. And unfortunately, they're gonna release the whole season at once like they always do, and I'm gonna be like blah. But it has that guy in it. The guy from I liked him in the show Dracula, but he was also in Game of Thrones as the richest man in Koth. I am the richest man in Koth. It's like cool. And then at the end, it turned out he wasn't the richest man in Karth. His safe was actually empty, and then they trapped him in it, and he probably died. But yeah, so that's Sweet Tooth coming out Friday. Moving on, number 2 on the list, The Conjuring 3 comes out on HBO Max on Friday. It's exciting. This is coming out on HBO Max. That means we won't have to wait long to watch it. I don't think this looks great. That is to say, I think it looks fine. This trailer doesn't hype me up or excite me, is the issue. But I'm all in and caught up on the universe, so I'll be watching this. But honestly, a lot of these movies just don't scare me much. And in fact, I've largely preferred the unconnected spin-offs more than the ones focusing on Ed and Lorraine. But still, it could be good. And even if it's not great, it'll make for an interesting watch. Excuse me, I almost burped. Or maybe I did a quiet burp and you might have picked it up. I'm not sure. Number 3 on the list, Port Authority, VOD, Tuesday. It was one of those guttural burps deep in my throat. Anyway, I don't know where this releases, this Port Authority movie, nor am I super excited to watch it, but I can't deny the trans romance looks cute and sweet and nice. I just don't personally like romances where the guy's thing is, I have anger issues, which is literally a line in that trailer. And that usually leads to the sort of Twilight abusive relationships that everyone pretends is super idealistic and romantic and what everybody should be striving for when they're really just abusive and not good relationships. But moving on from there to the next on the list, Oslo comes to HBO Max today. I was underwhelmed by the trailer, to be honest. I thought it just looked like a lot of people yelling at each other. That said, I agree with some of the comments on the YouTube video. People are saying that no matter the quality of the movie, that it is very relevant and timely to what is going on in the Middle East. That's very true. Right now, Israel and Palestine is at the center of everything that's going on, so it could be worth it just to learn a thing or two. But it just didn't seem that interesting, even with Ruth Wilson involved. Moving on from there, number 5 on the list, Operation Tango. That's a video game that comes out on consoles and PC on Tuesday. I've never heard of this game. And watching the normal trailer, I had no idea what this game was. It literally, there was no gameplay in the trailer. It was just like you could steal stuff, and there's two of them. One of them's a person, one of them's a hacker, and they work together and stuff. And it's like, okay, so what about the gameplay? Anyway, so you are playing both those characters. It's a co-op game where one person plays the hacker, one person plays the sneaky agent person. And so you got to sneak into areas and steal stuff from vaults and stuff, and the other person's like hacking up above. Basically, it's like if you've heard of Keep Talking and Nobody Explodes, which is a game where one person plays the game. Like one person has a bomb in front of them, and they have all these puzzles they have to figure out. But the other person has the rule book, like the it's like a manual with like 12 or so pages on it with all the like different solutions for the puzzles. And so the one player who's seeing the bomb has to explain the puzzles to the other player, who then has to be like, oh, okay, I'll flip through the pages quickly. Oh, yeah. The green dots with the blue circles. Yeah, you got to do this. And then they read it out. Okay, but there's 3 numbers on the side. Oh, yeah, well, if there's 3 numbers on the side, that means you got to do this. And so this is kind of like that, where the one person is doing all the sneaky sneak and sees the things, and the other person can only see what's on the video cameras. And then they have options. They can like hack in a system, security systems, and turn off alarms and set off things to distract people and stuff like that. Like it's that kind of game, which sounds cool and interesting. I was impressed, so I made it on the list when I wasn't expecting it to. Number 6 on the list is another game that I had never heard of before called Necromunda Hired Gun. It looks alright. It's in the Warhammer universe. It is a franchise I've a little interest in. I almost said little interest in, which the gap between those two things I don't think is much. But I have a little interest in, but never actually indulged that interest. What I actually know about the universe is very little. Pretty much all I know is that they travel faster than light by going into a hell dimension, which sounds pretty metal to me. Um, I also have concerns about this game, mainly that besides the city zone, it seems like everything in this game is trying to kill you, more like a Doom than any kind of interesting narrative experience. But at least Doom generally leads you on a quest. It seems like this will be more of a roguelite sort of style of killing things for better loot to kill better things for even better loot. At least it looks pretty, and the environments look weird and interesting and move a lot. But yeah, so I don't know what that game's gonna be like, but it could be interesting or it could not. Who knows? That comes out on Xbox, PlayStation, and PC on Tuesday, as is Operation Tango. Um, Operation Tango comes out on Switch as well, I believe. Honorable mentions, things that don't make this list, like continuing shows of quality or nonfiction content. If you're interested in American Ninja Warrior or Hell's Kitchen, it seems both those are returning on Sunday, though I couldn't care less about either of them. Also, Master Chef on Wednesday. I couldn't even tell you um, how Master Chef and Hell's Kitchen are different. Aren't they both the same jerk face? That guy who set himself on fire once while cooking in the nude? But yes, but yet he thinks he can call other people out for their cooking incompetence. I don't even remember his name anymore. I feel like if I tried really hard, I could remember his name, but I don't. George Ramsay. I hate that. Oh, Gordon Ramsay. George Ramsay. Gordon Ramsay. I knew I could get it. It was somewhere in my brain. I just don't like thinking about him. Moving on from there, Lego Masters. A reality competition involving Legos returns. I've never heard of it, but I don't think this is season one, and I can see the appeal of a Lego competition being hosted by Lego Batman himself. That was probably the easiest get in the world. It seems he does everything. The Reese commercials, those cell phone commercials where he's like super excited about the deals, and the employees are like, "You don't work here." Moving on from there, if you're a fan of Elder Scrolls Online, there is a new expansion coming out on Tuesday. That could be cool. I am a fan of Elder Scrolls Online, but I've never played it. So, cool. Hopefully one day I'll get to play it. And then I'll be a super fan. Water break. Do 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 do. Honey Nut Cheerios break. Do 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 do. Alright, still chewing. There's a lot of Honey Nut Cheerios. They're great. No, that's the wrong brand. Well, Kellogg's will never be, General Mills will never be advertising with me again. But I'm sure Frosted Flakes will be really excited that I just used their motto incorrectly. Moving on from there, Geekly news headlines. News from the past week you need to know so you won't be as ignorant as a QAnon loser. Starting at the top. From trash to jet fuel in 60 minutes and 220 degrees Celsius. That's not even very hot. Let's read this story. The story is by arstechnica.com. The person who wrote it, Doug Johnson. And this was released on May 24th, 2021. Vice, if you're paying attention, that is how you do a date. The world has a lot of plastic. 8.3 billion tons of the stuff has been produced since 1950, which is insane. It has so much plastic that humans have started trying to figure out ways to use the vast quantities of plastic waste we're accumulating. For some, that means recycling, which apparently doesn't work very well. For others, that means making art, which isn't very useful. For a team of researchers, I'm sorry, I obviously think art is useful. I just don't think it's, we could make a billion plastic statues, but that's not going to be practical. We would just have a planet covered in plastic statues. For a team of researchers based out of Washington State University, it means making jet fuel, and now this is exciting. Turning waste plastic into fuel isn't a new idea. Many researchers have achieved it through a process called pyrolysis, which involves heating plastic to between 300 degrees Celsius and 900 degrees Celsius in an oxygen-free environment. This breaks the substance down into fuel, along with some additional chemicals. Hong-Fei Lin, associate professor with the Jean and Linda Voiland School of Chemical Engineering and Bioengineering at WSU, thinks that he and his team have discovered a way to make the process more efficient and environmentally friendly. The team has a track record of making fuels from biomass sources. A year and a half ago, however, they decided to look into chemically deconstructing polyethylene, one of the most common forms of plastic in the world. The team began trying out pre-treating the plastic with different combinations of solvents and catalysts prior to heating. Initially, we didn't know what would happen, Lin told ours. I don't even know if that was a guy or a girl, but he's a girl now. Take that, Hong Fei. Yeah, I still don't know. Solving for the solvent. According to Lin, the solvents they treated penetrated the plastics and changed their physical properties, making them more accessible to the catalyst and maximizing the reaction rates. After testing a few different compounds, they found that N-hexane is the best solvent for producing the most fuel, while methyl-L-cyclohexane is best option for producing more high-quality lubricant, another product of the process. So they can make a high-quality lubricant or they can make jet fuel. That's interesting. The team also used a ruthenium on carbon catalyst, which cleaved the covalent bonds between the carbon atoms in the plastic. After heating the plastic for an hour at 220 degrees Celsius and injecting hydrogen into the reactor, the team found that 90% of it turned into the components of jet fuel and lubricant, so they get both. The remaining 10% was converted to gas, such as methane. I mean, if we can do that with plastics, can you imagine right now? Like, think about, we can finally get rid of these plastics that are like plaguing us and are like, they keep breaking down, they get inside our water and our fish, and we're eating them all the time. They're everywhere, and there's an island of them, and we're going to be swimming in them soon. Fucking plastics. We can actually break them down now. We can turn them into jet fuel of all things. How cool is that? The team can tinker with the different chemicals involved to produce more fuel or lubricant as desired, he said. This concept can also be applied to different types of plastics, though some, such as polyesters, have different types of chemical bonds. Therefore, those would need different treatments. The team tested the process in a relatively small reactor in their laboratory, but it could be scaled up to produce high-value products, like lubricants and fuels from waste plastics, Lin said. We used polyethylene as a demonstration. We found that it is very good as a proof of concept. The process is more energy efficient than other pyrolysis approaches, he said, which rely on much higher temperatures. Besides the environmental benefits of losing less energy in the process could also have an edge in the market if scaled up. When it comes to recycling costs, it's a key. According to Lin, the team is working with WSU's commercialization office and hopes to one day see it scaled up and used more broadly. He said that there has already been some early interest in the process from investors, but they can't say from whom. In all, he believes that this method could be a potential tool for reducing plastic waste around the globe. Worldwide, plastic is a very pressing environmental problem. We need to address this problem as soon as possible. I don't even want to read that next. But should we? Yes? Not everyone's quite as enamored with the idea, however. Andrew Rollinson personally loves to swim in plastic. He is an independent consultant on the topic and former academic, called the process totally pie in the sky and impractical. Pyrolysis is an old technology, Rollinson told ours. It was used to make things like creosote and methanol from wood prior to the widespread use of petrochemicals, he said. Since the 1950s, attempts have been made to use the process on plastic. So far, it has not worked out, according to Rollinson. Though the paper says the process is high efficiency, it's likely not, Rollinson says, as it requires a good deal of hydrogen pressure. Reaching the necessary pressure requires a lot of energy. Making and storing hydrogen also takes a lot of energy, reducing any greenhouse benefits. Well, but there would be benefits to not swimming in plastic. I feel like that could, and then we can fix the carbon elsewhere to offset that. He said that the experiment was only in a laboratory setting. It would require a far greater amount of hydrogen and energy to pressurize it if introduced at a commercial scale. Further, Rollinson noted that the catalysts and solvents used would also need to be scaled up for large amounts of plastics. Hexane, the solvent, is toxic, explosive, and environmentally harmful if released into the wild, he added. There's also an energy input in the process of making these chemicals. In an email to ours, Lin acknowledged that solvent recovery and reuse would add costs, but the technology itself would work to keep costs low. All the same, Rollinson has doubts. No way it's a goer at all, he said. For science's sake, it's quite interesting, but as a practical answer to plastic, it's not workable. Well, you just sound like a fuddy-duddy, buddy. Moving on from there. What I say about that article, finally an actually effective use for recycled plastics. If these prove to be viable, this could be huge in a world where we're drowning in plastics and don't know what to do about it. So that's definitely something to keep an eye on. Moving on from there, GOP millionaire senator is very worried wages might be getting too high. This is a story on Vice.com by Paul Bless on May 24th, 2021. That's how not to write a date. Republican Senator Ron Johnson from Wisconsin was worth at least $10 million as of 2019, but he's worried about wages rising a bit too fast because of the free market or something. Johnson spoke with Madison TV station WCOW on Sunday about his support for a bill in the Wisconsin legislature that would sever the state from enhanced federal unemployment benefits. Currently, unemployed people can get $300 per week in benefits on top of what they get from their state governments. But so far, 23 states have moved to end the benefit at the end of June rather than September, when congressional authorization expires. Johnson echoed the claim from governors in those states as well as the U.S. Chamber of Commerce that the unemployment benefits prevent people from having the incentive to go back to work. Unemployment benefits are not meant to provide replacement wages, Johnson whined. We're back in a normal type of economic cycle now where unemployment benefits are supposed to be a bridge to a new job. But when asked by host AJ Bayatpour about increasing costs of childcare and how low wages barely cover it, women have left or been forced out of the workforce due to the pandemic at a higher rate than men, Johnson posed another explanation. Actually, workers are making too much money too fast. Wages are set in the marketplace and businesses pay what wages they can afford based on the competitive situation, Johnson said. I just have greater faith in the marketplace setting appropriate wage rates. See, what that guy ignores, and what pisses me off, because that guy just completely ignores the fact that, yeah, we have to balance the wages and keep them super low so that, we can stay competitive. And it's like, what about the fact that the people at the top continue needing to get increased profits, right? You forget that part where if the shareholders don't constantly have increased profits, it's considered you're failing. You got to increase the profits of the people at the top. People always have to see profits all the time, except for the people who work for us. Those people can't see increased profits at all. They can't see anything increase. They must keep working at the bare minimum because we have to keep taking care of the shareholders. They're literally stealing that money from us, right? And then they're saying, well, but inflation. Well, guess what? Inflation is happening anyway. Inflation is happening because of you guys, not because of us. Wage rates are now being bid up because there is a labor shortage, and if you're a worker, who's saying that? Oh, yeah, okay. Wage rates are now being bid up because there is a labor shortage, and if you're a worker, that's a good thing, but here's the downside to that, he added. Commodities go up and down, and you can have temporary increases in prices that come back down. Wage rates increasing, he said, creates permanent inflation. Johnson worried that workers making more money might not be a good thing after all. Also, they totally messed up with a bunch of the quotation marks there, but I'm not going to make a thing of it because it's way better than all the mistakes I have in my thing this week. Increases in wage rates ratchet up, but again, they get paid for this, and I don't. I'm just saying. There's a reason why I don't put so much work into editing shit, because it's like, I'm only getting so much more money for this, and that's zero, by the way. Increases in wage rates ratchet up, and that creates permanent inflation. So you may feel good about getting a 5 or 6 or 7% raise. But if general inflation is 6, 7, or 8%, this is still that asshole, isn't it? Let me do this sentence again. Increases in wage rates ratchet up, and that creates permanent inflation. So you may feel good about getting a 5 or 6 or 7% increase, but if general inflation is 6, 7, or 8%, that increase is just completely wiped out. But I have seen years go by without any increase in wages and still seeing inflation happen. So like, inflation happens regardless. It's happening regardless. So then all you're saying is the poor people should just be allowed to starve to death and die. Then the world will be better, is what this guy's saying. That's literally the conservative agenda. And like, I don't understand how this is a reasonable view of life. I'm highly concerned that what we are now looking at is a witch's brew being concocted with all the ingredients for stagflation. Over the past several decades, wages for workers have stagnated, particularly for low-wage earners, and inequality has grown exponentially. The obvious immediate fix would be to hike the federal minimum wage, which has been a pitiful... And I mean, that's what's so frustrating, is that inequality keeps growing, and yet this guy's talking about, well, we have to pay, like, we have to be the ones that suffer so that the prices can be lower, because heaven forbid the millionaires stop fucking making extra millions off of our fucking suffering. That's literally what this guy is saying. I don't understand how people are fucking okay with this shit. He's saying this, literally saying what I just said in different words. And then somehow it's okay. It's so infuriating. The obvious immediate fix would be to hike the federal minimum wage, which has been a pitiful $7.25 since 2009. That's in the US. And index it to inflation. 10 states plus Washington, D.C. have already done just that, according to the Pew Research Center. Wisconsin, where the minimum wage is still $7.25, is not one of them. Raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour could save 1.4 million job losses. could cost 1.4 million job losses, the Congressional Budget Office found earlier this year. But the hike would also affect 17 million workers and pull nearly, because again, that's another thing. That's another thing they love to be like, well, if you raise the wages, we're just gonna have to fire a whole bunch of people because again, heaven forbid the millionaires make a few less millions of dollars. We can't take away from that. We have to take away from the poor people and make them suffer. It's like great, but then also you don't have people doing your customer service anymore, and you lose your customers, and you lose your money, and you go bankrupt. So good business choices you chose trying to own the libs, fucking assholes. But the hike would also affect 17 million workers and pull nearly 1 million people out of poverty, which would be great. Either way, it looks as though Wisconsin won't be joining the nearly 24 states who've cut off federal unemployment benefits so far. Governor Tony Evers said last week that he was strongly considering vetoing the bill, and Republicans in the legislature later voted to reinstate work search requirements for unemployment. All right, well, good job, Wisconsin. It's not a surprise, but at the end of the day, this whole pushback against poor people and people that are struggling during this pandemic, I have trouble understanding, Evers told the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel. Thank you, Evers. Fucking thank you, Evers. We need more people like you. So what I said about this, what a bunch of fucking bullshit. I mean, I've made my point clear. Wages increase based on what the market can afford. No, that's bullshit because the market insists assholes like you must get increasing profits. So they just keep taking their millions out of the pool of money that is supposed to be for everyone while wages stagnate. And that constant drive for never-ending profits is what increases inflation. This bullshit is the biggest conservative lie and Ponzi scheme, and it is literally to blame for why my world is horrible. Why the it is literally to blame for why the world is horrible and yours and my life sucks. It's the conservative agenda. 100% the conservative agenda. What we're talking about right now is 100% why our lives suck right now. They could be 100 times better, 100 times better, but because of people like this, because these conservative assholes keep pushing this lie that, hey, us getting better wages would destroy everything, but we need to keep giving more millions to those millionaires. They need to keep earning more. It has to be exponential growth all the time, even if that means taking the money that should be going to the rest of the people. It's all bullshit. And that's why our lives are shit. That's why we are miserable and living in hell. And it's because of these assholes. And in case you can't tell, I'm pissed off. That pisses me the fuck off because people fall for this shit. You talk about the big lie? That is the big lie. Right there. 100%. Not even, ugh. Anyway, moving on. Toddler finds gun in sofa, accidentally shoots young sister. Great, we can find something else to get really pissed off about. This is a story by the Associated Press, posted May 22nd, 2021 at 5 p.m. out of Lakeland, Florida. A 3-year-old boy accidentally shot his 2-year-old sister after finding a gun that had been hidden between sofa cushions by a family friend, Florida authorities said Saturday. The girl was in exceptionally critical condition, said Polk County Sheriff Grady Judd at a news conference. After the girl was shot, 3 men in the home at the time scooped up the children and jumped in a car. Of course, it was 3 men in the home at the time. And jumped in a car to drive to a hospital. On their way, they got into a crash with another vehicle, causing several more injuries. The girl and one of the adults was taken to the hospital by a good Samaritan who had stopped to offer assistance after the crash, Judd said. Like, Jesus fucking Christ, what a bunch of fucking dumbass bullshit. The gun was brought into the Lakeland, Florida home by one of 3 men who had gathered Friday night to watch TV, authorities said. Oh my god, so it wasn't even meant to... Are you fucking kidding me right now? Kevonte Wilson, 23, told investigators he had placed the gun between the sofa cushions so that it would be hidden from the children. That is the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life. He was arrested on charges of failing to safely store a firearm, carrying a concealed firearm, and possession of marijuana. He could face other counts, Judd said. The home's owner, Chad Darien, 24, was charged with possession of marijuana and maintaining a house for drug use, the sheriff said. While 2 kids were inside, 3 and 2 years old, I don't necessarily want to say that people shouldn't be allowed to smoke pot while looking after children, because I happen to support somewhat extreme pot rights. But I do think that these people are acting very inappropriately based on many other factors surrounding all this. Um, Judge said a Florida crime victim's privacy law prevented him from saying how the children were related to the adults in the home. An online court docket showed no cases for either Wilson or Darian Saturday, so it was unknown if they had attorneys who could comment. Judge said everyone was cooperating with detectives. The boy was taken by the Department of Children and Families and placed in the home of his grandmother. Good choice. There was no reason to think that this was an intentional act. Judge said he was a baby playing with what he saw as some kind of toy. Fucking fuck. There is an unimaginable level of stupidity on display in this article, is what I say. From where the house chose to stash their gun, thinking it was safe, to them causing a multi-car pile-up crash on the way to the hospital, to the very fact that guns are still legal. I've said it before and I've said it again. If banning guns would save even one child, it is monstrous that so many people believe children should die so they can goof around and shoot their guns. Guns aren't toys. But it wasn't the child that thought they were. It was his parents. This girl, or maybe not his parents, but whoever was looking after these kids, they thought that guns were a toy and they could just carry them around and put them in the fucking couch and it wouldn't be a big deal. And now this girl is shot. And she wouldn't be if guns were banned. That's all I'm saying. I don't see how it's worth it. I don't see how having your fucking toy guns that kill people is fucking more important than saving lives. Moving on. Hong Kong legislature due to approve curbs on public vote. This is a story out of the Associated Press by Zhen Su, posted on May 26, 2021, out of Hong Kong. Hong Kong's legislature is expected Wednesday to change electoral laws to drastically reduce public's ability to vote for lawmakers and increase the number of pro-Beijing lawmakers making decisions for the city. Once approved, the amendments mean the city's National Security Department will check the backgrounds of potential candidates for public office, and a new committee will be set up to ensure those candidates are patriotic. Jesus Christ. Just that word being used in that context is disgusting. That's literally, I wanted to throw up in my mouth. Because they don't mean patriotic, right? They mean fucking loyal to the king. They mean fucking tyrants. They mean fucking, they support tyranny. They support fucking fascism. They're fucking dumbass government assholes. As long as they're dumbass government assholes, then great, they can continue to work for this fucking office. But if they have any ideas on freedom, then fuck those fuckers. Get them the fuck out of here and maybe murder them while we're at it. Or just, allegedly, I should probably add, or just put them in prison is, I think, more what they usually do with people like that. I don't think they're literally shooting these people in the head and burying them in mass graves. I don't think that's happening. I know that there is a push by what they like to call Chinese nationalists, trying to push this idea that, well, we're just listening to the media, and the reality is everything's totally fine in China. There's absolutely nothing wrong, and the government says there's nothing wrong. They tell us there's nothing wrong, and yet you guys keep trying to say there is something wrong, but the government says there isn't, so you guys need to stop being such fucking assholes and saying there's something wrong when there isn't. And you guys just keep making shit up. And so, I mean, me saying that they're killing these people is perhaps pushing into what they are saying about us exaggerating the situation. I don't want to do that, but they are doing horrible things. Anyway, the number of seats in Hong Kong's legislature will be expanded to 90, with 40 of them elected by a largely pro-Beijing election committee. The number of legislatures elected directly by Hong Kong voters will be cut to 20 from the previous 35. That is also disgusting and gross. Debate is scheduled before the legislature votes on the bill, but little to no opposition is expected because, of course, who would be against taking away freedom? Who would be against taking away democracy and creating tyranny? Isn't that what everybody wants? Because we all trust and love our government. And we love our leader. Go Donald Trump. Like, what fucking bullshit? This is not how governments are supposed to work. They're supposed to be for the people, not people do what we say. Debate is scheduled before the legislature votes on the bill, but little no opposition is expected. The body's members are largely pro-Beijing after opposition lawmakers resigned en masse last year in protest over the ousting of four deemed to be insufficiently loyal to Beijing. So, I mean, of course there's no one to oppose it because they all resigned already. The changes to Hong Kong's elections come as Beijing further tightens control over the semi-autonomous city that saw months of anti-government protests and political strife in 2019. Authorities have arrested and charged most of the city's outspoken pro-democracy advocates, such as Joshua Wong, who was a student leader of 2014 protests, as well as media tycoon Jimmy Lai, who founded the Apple Daily newspaper. China's rubber-stamped parliament in March endorsed changes to the city's electoral system, which then led to Hong Kong's proposals. They are the latest in a string of moves to ensure people elected to office or serving the city are loyal to Beijing. Which, again, no, they mean are loyal to the government and not are loyal to the people. An amendment the legislature approved earlier this month requiring the city's over 400 district councillors who mainly deal with municipal matters to take an oath pledging their loyalty to Hong Kong and to upholding its mini-constitution. The oath was previously required only of legislators and government officials such as the chief executive. That was Zen Su of the Associated Press. Thank you, Zen Su, for your continued work. I'm sorry that your country's going to hell. Moving on from there. No one had a problem with puberty blockers when only cis kids took them, is a story from Vice.com. Let's check this out. Because it's fun looking at the hypocrisy of the Republicans. We've already screamed about it enough, but let's hear a bit more. This is a story from Hannah Smothers on May 28th, 2021, but they did it 28/5/21 because they're dumb. This is a story out of Vice.com by Hannah Smothers, Brooklyn. She's in Brooklyn. Right now, 13 mostly GOP-run states have at least one active bill that targets healthcare for transgender children. Sorry. And one state, Arkansas, already passed such a law, becoming the first state in the country to come after vital water break. I just don't have that on myself, but I don't even care anymore. Blah. All right, let me start over. Right now, 13, mostly GOP-run states have at least one active bill that targets healthcare for transgender children, and one state, Arkansas, already passed such a law, becoming the first state in the country to come after vital pediatric trans healthcare. The bills all function differently. Some introduced punitive measures for physicians who provide gender-affirming care, while others, because nothing's better than going after our doctors in the middle of a pandemic. While others, like an active bill in Texas, designate gender-affirming care as child abuse. It's certainly the most aggressive attack I've seen, Chase Strangio, deputy director for trans justice at the ACLU, previously told Vice. He's right. The dozens of bills circulating at the state level represent the most widespread attack on the rights of trans and non-binary children that the United States has yet to see. I mean, what sort of fucking villain calls that child abuse? You would have to be real, mustache twirling motherfucker. While they may operate slightly differently, as Vice reported, the bills employ the common GOP tactic of copy and paste legislation. Embedded within each bill is an argument that puberty blockers, or hormones that temporarily suppress puberty, are inherently dangerous and suffer from a lack of long-term longitudinal data. But as pediatric endocrinologists told Vice, nothing could be further from the truth. Puberty blockers have long been used to treat precocious puberty, the medical term for early puberty in cisgender children, safely and without any controversy. Puberty blockers have been used for decades in cisgender children who either are going through puberty too early, or in some instances, kids who are going through puberty very quickly. Jason Klein, a pediatric endocrinologist and assistant director of the Transgender Youth Health Program at Hassenfield Children's Hospital at NYU, adult Vice. Why is that so long? Why is your title so long? Their use has been FDA approved, well studied, well documented, and well tolerated for a long time now, and it's the exact same medication that we use in trans or non-binary children to basically put a pause on pubertal development. Exactly the same medications, at exactly the same doses. Shonim Rabun, An assistant professor in the Dell Medical School's Department of Pediatrics said puberty blockers are an important treatment option because early puberty can cause health issues into adulthood. The main two things early puberty affects is their final adult height. It can make them much shorter, and it has effects on the bones as well, Rabin said. And then it can make them start a period early. We're talking about 8 years old having their period. I don't know anybody, parent or child, that would be ready for an 8-year-old to be having a period. Yeah, no shit. Rabin, who works as a pediatric endocrinologist in Texas, said the bills introduced in her state and throughout the country make me really nervous because we've been using puberty blockers forever. To be clear, the bills as written leave exceptions specifically for cis kids. In every case, the laws target puberty blockers only when used as trans care. Physicians could continue providing the medication to cis kids who start puberty too early, but could face punishment or risk child abuse charges if they provide the exact same medication for a child who is trans or non-binary. Oddly enough, the bills almost never use the words transgender or non-binary, instead referring to gender transitioning or gender reassignment. GOP lawmakers stake their false claims that puberty blockers are understudied and unapproved on the fact that the FDA has yet to give approval for puberty blockers specifically as a treatment for transgender and non-binary care. It's significant here that the FDA is historically slow to approve healthcare for those who aren't cisgender. Klein referred to this as merely a veil behind which lawmakers are hiding blatant discrimination for kids who aren't cisgender. There's a lot of data in the trans and non-binary population. There's a lot of data in the trans and non-binary population. It's not like this is just now being studied, Klein said. Studies outside the US have been going on for a while now, and studies in the US have been going on for at least 15 years, maybe longer. My guess, and I don't know for sure, is that there's a lot of political background to approving puberty blockers for trans kids. There might be some concern or worry about blowback, but as a pediatric endocrinologist who treats kids who are cisgender and is also the assistant director of our transgender program, it's the same outcome. GOP lawmakers love to claim, even in the writing of these bills, that kids who receive gender-affirming care face psychological distress and the inevitability that they later change their minds, a false logic that completely ignores the distress trans and non-binary kids and teens already have to deal with if their loved ones, teachers, coaches, and peers refuse to affirm their gender. Endocrinologists in the Netherlands were the first to study puberty blockers in trans children and recently told the Scientific American that out of about 1,500 teens who were treated, none experienced any major side effects. Those researchers further found, perhaps unsurprisingly, that trans and non-binary adolescents who receive gender-affirming care have fewer suicide attempts than those who didn't receive early care. So basically, these fucking villains are saying, I want children to kill themselves, because I can't stand the idea that they are doing things that don't affect me at all. It's very clear that this is a growing national conversation about the quote-unquote dangers of treating these kids, and it's really terrifying, Klein said. To me, the side effects of these medications are well documented and the medications are safe. This legislation is out there in order to try to suppress a population that is already particularly vulnerable from obtaining medical care. And that's dangerous, obviously. That was a story from Vice.com by Hannah, whatever her name was. I already closed that window. Moving on from there. 2. GOP blocks Capitol riot probe displaying loyalty to Trump. Of course they did. And this is a story out of the Associated Press by Mary Claire Jelinek and Lisa Mascaro. And it was posted May 29th, 12:13 a.m. Out of Washington. Out of Washington. Senator Republicans blocked creation of a bipartisan panel to investigate the deadly January 6th attack on the Capitol, displaying continuing party loyalty to former President Donald Trump and firm determination to shift the political focus away from the violent insurrection by his GOP supporters. Another one of those long sentences that I love so much. Also, I wanted to point out, I don't think it's mentioned in this article, but totally one person was literally quoted saying, I'm not going to vote for this until it's a bipartisan committee. And it's like, everyone immediately jumped on him like, it is a bipartisan committee. It's literally half Republican. And he still didn't give a shit. He still didn't vote for it because these people don't give a shit. They're lying out their ass and they're just saying whatever fucking bullshit they please, and nothing matters in the world at all, apparently, ever. The Senate vote on Friday was 54-35, 6 short of the 60 needed to take up a House-passed bill that would have formed an independent 10-member commission evenly split between the two parties. It came a day after emotional appeals for the commission from police who fought the mob, the family of an officer who died, and lawmakers in both parties who fled Capitol chambers in the worst attack on the building in 2 centuries. The Republicans were mostly but not totally united. 6 voted with Democrats to move forward. 11 senators, 9 Republicans and 2 Democrats, missed the vote, an unusually high number of absentees for one of the highest profile votes of the year. At least one of the missing Republicans would have voted in favor of considering the commission, according to his office. The GOP opposition means that questions about who should bear responsibility for the attack could continue to be filtered through a partisan lens in congressional committees, rather than addressed by an outside independent panel modeled after the commission that investigated September 11, 2001 terrorist attacks. So remember, for the record, that Democrats said, hey, let's create a bipartisan. We don't want to we don't want to make it seem like we're just attacking Republicans. Let's get Republicans in here on they'll be half of the voices, and let's get to the bottom of this together. And Republicans said, absolutely not. We want you to do it all yourselves so that we can stand here and complain about it. Wah, 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 wah. Is literally what they decided on, which is complete dumbass bullshit. The GOP opposition, and don't forget, because I read this, I think it was in one of the previous articles we just read through, but don't forget that they are also the ones that in like 10 states have refused the unemployment bonus that their people were getting, because they just thought that, well, poor people are lazy and therefore they don't deserve the extra $300. That's Republicans that decided that. And a lot of people out there that's going to affect are people who voted for those people who are like, they stand up for the poor, they stand up for me, and they have my best interest in heart. Well, apparently they thought your best interest was taking away money from you, money that was offered freely from the government. And so I hope you remember that when you vote next year. Let's keep that in mind. Good. Awesome. Moving forward. The GOP opposition means that questions about who should bear responsibility for the attack, we already read that. The investigations will happen with or without Republicans, declared Louisiana Senator Bill Cassidy, one of the Republicans who voted to move forward. To ensure the investigations are fair, impartial, and focused on the facts, Republicans need to be involved. So he was the one reasonable Republican out there. Apparently there was like 9 or 7 or something like that. The vote was in part a GOP attempt to placate Trump or avoid his reprisals, as he has kept a firm hold on the party since his defeat by Democrat Joe Biden. The former president told his supporters to fight like hell to overturn his defeat before the siege, and continues to falsely say he won the election, claims shouted by his supporters as they stormed the building. Trump called the commission legislation a Democrat trap. Friday's vote, the first successful use of a Senate filibuster in the Biden presidency, was emblematic of the profound mistrust between the two parties since the siege, especially among Republicans, with some in the party downplaying the violence and defending the rioters. The vote also is likely to galvanize Democratic pressure to do away with the filibuster, a time-honored procedure typically used to kill major legislation. It requires 60 votes to move ahead, rather than a simple majority in the 100-member Senate. With the Senate evenly split 50-50, Democrats needed support from 10 Republicans to move to the commission bill. Speaking to his Republican colleagues, Senate Democratic leader Chuck Schumer said that after the voting, they were trying to sweep the horrors of that day under the rug out of fear or fealty to Trump. He left open the possibility of another vote in the future on establishing a bipartisan commission, declaring the events of January 6 will be investigated. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi echoed that commitment, saying Democrats will find the truth. Though the bill to form the commission passed the House earlier this month with the support of almost 3 dozen Republicans, most GOP senators said they believed the bipartisan panel would eventually be used against them politically. While initially saying he was open to the idea, Senate Republican leader Mitch McConnell turned firmly against it in recent days, arguing that the panel's investigation would be partisan despite the even split among party members. McConnell, who once said Trump was responsible for provoking the mob attack on the Capitol, said dismissively of the Democrats, they'd like to continue to litigate the former president into the future. Still, 6 in McConnell's caucus defied him, arguing that an independent look was needed, and Pennsylvania's Pat Toomey would have brought the total to 7, but for a family commitment, his office said. In addition to Cassidy, the Republicans who voted to move forward were Lisa Murkowski of Alaska, Susan Collins of Maine, Ben Sasse of Nebraska, Rob Portman of Ohio and Mitt Romney of Utah. Wow, congrats, Mitt Romney. Murkowski said Thursday evening that she needed to know more about what happened before and on the day of the attack and why. Truth is hard stuff, but we've got a responsibility to it, she said. We just can't pretend that nothing bad happened, or that people just got too excitable. Something bad happened, and it's important to lay that out. Some Republican colleagues strongly disagree, defending the writers who supported Trump and his false insistence that the election was stolen from him. A House Republican said this month that one video of the insurrection looked like a normal tourist visit. What fucking bullshit. In reality, the attack was the worst on the Capitol in 200 years. The protesters interrupted the certification of Biden's win over Trump, constructed a mock gallows in front of the Capitol, and called for the hanging of Vice President Mike Pence, who was overseeing the proceedings inside. Lawmakers hid on the floor of the House balcony as rioters tried to break in, and senators evacuated their chambers mere minutes before it was ransacked. 4 of the protesters died that day, including a woman who was shot and killed by police as she tried to break into the House chambers. Dozens of police officers were injured, and 2 took their own lives in the days afterwards. What? Are you serious? I was unaware of this. Dozens of police officers were injured, and 2 police officers took their own lives in the day afterwards. What? Afterward. That's insane. Because of the insurrection? Capitol Police Officer Brian Sicknick collapsed and died after engaging with rioters, and video showed 2 men spraying Sicknick and another officer with a chemical. The Washington Medical Examiner said he suffered a stroke and died from natural causes. So maybe that's true? Senate Democrats angrily questioned how the Republicans could vote against an independent investigation. An insurrection without consequences, without even a proper investigation, is a dress rehearsal for another insurrection, said Illinois Senator Dick Durbin, the number 2 Democrat in Congress. When the Capitol Police, who protect us with their lives, asked for this commission, we are ingrates to refuse. And in fact, a lot of Republicans voiced like, we're doing this for the police because, they did such a good job and I love the police. I don't want to, criticize the police. It's like, no, the police are asking for this, you fucking asshole. The Republicans' political arguments over the violent siege, which is still raw for many in the Capitol almost 5 months later, have frustrated not only the Democrats and some of the Republican colleagues, but also those who fought off the rioters. Sicknick's mother, girlfriend, and 2 police officers who battled the rioters alongside him went office to office and asked Republicans to support the commission. Michael Fanone, a Metropolitan Police Department officer who responded to the attack, joined Sicknick's family on Capitol Hill Thursday. In between meetings with Republican senators, he said a commission is necessary for us to heal as a nation from the trauma that we all experienced that day. Fanone has described being dragged down the Capitol steps by rioters who shocked him with a stun gun and beat him. Jesus Christ. Sicknick's mother, Gladys Sicknick, suggested those who opposed the panel visit her son's grave. In an interview on CNN after the vote, she asked the Republican what kind of country do they want. And that was a story of the Associated Press. And that was the last story we have here. Remember to get instant reactions to the news and articles that don't make the cut on Twitter at Andrew Geczy. That's AndrewGczyzy. Moving on from there to the Geekly blog. That's everything going on in my personal life, my writing dreams, and for the brand. It wasn't a great week this week, at least for me. It wasn't as productive as I wanted it to be. I didn't even end up cleaning my apartment, something that is pretty necessary as my place is getting grosser and grosser. It's just dust in the corners and shit. And I put it off all week. But maybe I'll get to it next week. Also, I failed to quit smoking, something I really wanted to do. Now, failing either of those things in light of succeeding at the other would have been understandable. But I just plain failed to do both. Just was so depressed a whole lot, slept too much, played some video games, got kicked from my guild in World of Warcraft for no reason, the leader of the guild went Looney Tunes, grocery shopped, so I got a lot of food around for now, and sent out a query to an agent, so thank God I at least did something productive, but I only queried one agent, so don't get too excited. I'll hopefully do more over time after cleaning my place. Anyway, I'll have plans for this weekend. I have plans for this weekend. I'm gonna edit the last week of Adrift, and then I'm gonna start writing the first week of Royalty Chapter 2. I could even conceivably release week 4 of Drift Homeless early tonight instead of Monday. I'll start a poll, and if even one person votes in the poll, early chapter for you, all of you, it is. It's a doozy too, long and crazy. And I think that's what I'm gonna do from now on. I got tired of my writing bleeding into Mondays, so from now on I'm going to devote my weekends to 99% Geek and just get started on the writing as soon as I'm done this Geekly Weekly. I'd rather stay up all night writing Saturday to Sunday if need be instead of Sunday to Monday. Anyway, moving on from there, the Geekly Weekly comments, questions, and stats. Remember, you can direct message me at Andrew Geczy on Twitter or at WingCommander4 on Instagram, or comment below on patreon.com/99geek or 99geek.ca. Comments. No comments, though I was followed by John Cena. Like the wrestler John Cena. If Don Cheadle hadn't unfollowed me like half a year ago, I could brag about how I'm collecting celebrity follows. But ah well, just John Cena. And Edward James almost randomly. I'm sure he's almost unfollowed me himself a time or two. I haven't actually checked in a few months. Maybe he did. I have lost a bunch of followers. But anyway, I'm surprised John Cena followed me. I had my hand in front of my face, and I didn't think he could see me. Can't see me. Can't see this. I don't know. I don't know what he says. Um, Numbers, worse than ever. My podcast, the one that's been doing better than ever? Well, it had a couple days this week with nothing. Just like not even a sneeze. Out of nowhere. Like Wednesday, Thursday were no podcast day, and everyone around the world took part. It sucks. Every time I think I'm seeing improvements and maybe things will start feeding the perpetual machine, like how it's supposed to work. 2 is supposed to become 4, 4 is supposed to become 8. Instead, 2 becomes 4, 4 becomes 5, and 5 becomes 0. And then it's back to 1 becomes 2. Did I mention I've been depressed this week? Anyway, my name is Andrew Geczy, and my brand is 99% Geek, found at 99geek.ca. I'm a writer writing monthly chapters of novels like episodes of TV shows, releasing them in 4 weekly segments, a teaser and 3 acts on Mondays at noonish on my Patreon page. Every month it's a different book, over a range of genres, and they sometimes even cross over and connect. At the end of the month, the finished chapter is added to the PDFs attached at the bottom of every post. Finally, the finished books are self-published on Amazon. There's a dark fantasy story about a post-apocalyptic world where powerful royals rule and enslave the remaining people, struggling to survive on the last remaining landmass. There's also a sci-fi story about a people on a dying world who have built a ship to a new one, but the project is almost brought down by terrorist organization within their own ranks. Finally, there's a crossover story where characters from my other books are brought into the distant future where the princess of a far advanced civilization, one that lives in a solar system-sized megastructure around a Dyson Sphere, needs help defeating her twisted, power-hungry brother. And all these stories will be outside the paywall for all to enjoy as new episodes release weekly, and the finished chapters will be attached to the bottom of every post on the site in convenient PDF format, readable on computers, tablets, ebook readers, and phones at the end of the month. But that's not all my stories. There's also urban fantasy tales about a teenage girl turned into a vampire against her will, or a scorned lover investigating paranormal boop boo doo doo doo, phenomena doo 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 doo, or a journalist covering news and politics in the Middle East. And there's a fantasy story about a fallen angel trying to stop the end of the world. All these stories are published and available on Amazon and are also safe and sound behind the paywall in PDF format attached to an archive at the top of my Patreon page. Only viewable by subscribers, my entire library of work, thousands of pages worth, is easily accessible to every subscriber at any level. There's even a Geekly Weekly blog, which covers all the news you may have missed over the week, as well as ranks a week's worth of television, and makes predictions on what new pop culture things might be in the public consciousness for the next week. It releases every Saturday at noonish. Finally, I do video game streams, both multiplayer matchmaking as well as single-player campaign playthroughs. You can see me play games like Final Fantasy, Call of Duty, Hitman, and more. Watch them as they happen on twitch.tv/wingcommander4, or wait till I release the recorded videos on days when I have nothing else to release. And you can see it all in one place. So stay tuned and maybe subscribe. It's only $1 and the support you show will go a very long way, I promise. There are also higher tiers. Give $5 one month and you can name a character or location or suggest a thing you might want to see. Basically, you get to give a noun and then I promise to incorporate that noun into one of my stories somehow. Maybe not the same month you give the suggestion, but within 3 months, guaranteed. No matter how crazy, you can't sabotage me, I promise. Think of it like a fun improv game. And you can keep giving nouns for every month you pay at the $5 tier. Or if you give $10, you don't get 2 nouns, but you can give a description to go with your noun. Describe the personality of your character, or the look of your location, or the importance of your item. For $10, you get a noun and a description. You can also give $1 towards supporting my efforts at video game streaming, or my weekly blog if that's more where your interests lie. And all subscribers at every tier will get early access to my writing, unedited but released a week early if you finish the current week. And feel excited to find out what happens next. I'm as poor as it gets, living paycheck to paycheck and sometimes starving. but not this week, so relax. So I understand if you are too. I don't want to take food out of your mouths. Your attention is enough. Say something, comment here, or at the very least, follow me on Twitter at Andrew Geczy or Instagram at WingCommander4. Remember to leave a review if you read one of my books. Any reviews on Amazon/Goodreads or subscriptions here, or comments on social media will just encourage more people to check out my work and allow me to grow. I can't do it without your efforts. That's 3 different ways you can help. Write reviews on any site that lets you, subscribe here for as low as $1, or at the very least, use your voice to let me and the world know you like what you read here. Live long and prosper. May the force be with you. Long live Marceline the Vampire Queen. Remember that Kong bows to no one, but Godzilla is the king of all monsters. We are the 99% Geek.